10.3 changed every single Tier 10 available in World of Tanks Blitz. Vehicles like the TVP got a little bit worse, where vehicles like the E50M got a lot better. There were a lot of changes, and obviously it's hard to keep up with all of them, especially if you don't play Blitz for a living. In today's video, I will be going over the 6 best Tier 10s to get your hands on if you understand how to drive them in Update 10.3. Now, I'm not going to be including the grind to the Tier 10. I will have a separate video up later this week with that in mind. Grinding as a newer player, what are the best Tier 10s to go for? But we are going to be ignoring the Tier 9s, 8s, all that. We're going to be specifically talking about the Tier 10s, why they are the best, and their overall capabilities. So, getting into the number 6 position, we have an Italian medium, being the Progetto 65. This is a fantastic vehicle for many reasons after Update 10.3. First of all, its DPM is absolutely fantastic now, which is weird as it's an auto-reloader. Normally you would think auto-reloaders have bad damage per minute. However, the base reload on this tank, if I can change over to display capture, here we go. So now you can see my calculator. The base reload on the Progetto is 7.24 seconds with 350 damage per shot. So if we do 60 divided by 7.24, that is going to give us 8.28 rounds a minute. Multiply that by the 350 damage per shot. The Progetto 65 sits at 2,900 damage per minute just on single shot. What that means is if you add on the additional 2 shells the vehicle has, which is 700 damage, you have 3,600 DPM in the Progetto 65, just dumping your clip and then shooting on single shot. That is great DPM. It means you can keep up with vehicles like the Leopard 1, the Object 140, but you don't have a lot of downsides like those vehicles. First of all, the Progetto features a super troll upper plate that is actually incredibly hard to pen. Anybody that's aimed at the Progetto knows how troll that upper plate is. When you pair that with very good mobility, a top speed of 58 kilometers per hour, fantastic power to weight, and 9 degrees of gun depression, it creates an incredibly flexible and enjoyable experience. The Progetto 65 for many years when it first came out was my favorite Tier 10 in the game due to its playstyle, its mobility, and everything. And Wargaming has finally buffed it to a point now where it is easily one of the best Tier 10s. It's super flexible due to the auto reloader, it's got the mobility, it's got the DPM to get the job done. It really doesn't have any downsides apart from poor turret armor, but as long as you know how to use it properly, that won't be a problem. The other downside that people might be quick to mention is the accuracy. Yeah, it's a bit bad, but as long as you're playing at medium ranges, you'll be fine. So, the Progetto makes it into my list of the number 6 position. In number 5, we move on to our first out of 2 tank destroyers. This one being the Chinese Tier 10 TD, the WZ-113 GFT. For any of you that have not seen my video on this vehicle, I would highly recommend to check it out after watching this video. The 113 GFT is insane. First of all, its armor is broken. The entire upper plate, so as long as you're not shooting at that lower plate at the bottom, the entire upper plate is 350 millimeters thick on flat ground. If you're using the 6 degrees of gun depression this vehicle has, it is 380 millimeters thick. Essentially, that means even Tier 10s with high heat pen like the IS-4, the T57 Heavy, the E5 are not going to be able to pen a hull-down WZ-113 GFT, which is absolutely insane. When you pair that with a gun that hits really hard with 640 damage per shot, very fast aiming time at 3.4 seconds, and okay dispersion to get the job done, the vehicle is ridiculous. It's got over 400 millimeters of heat pen, 2,800 DPM, and this is running calibrated shells. Plus, mobility-wise, the tank has a power to weight of 18, which is fairly good, and a top speed of 42. It also turns at 50 degrees a second. I mean, the vehicle has everything you would want going for it when it comes to a tank destroyer. It really has no downsides. Even the side armor is pretty dang strong. So it's a very good beginner TD, if that's what you're trying to look for here, but it's also a fantastic tank destroyer for anybody that just wants to have a fun time and crap on your opponents. It might not be the prettiest tank to look at, but that definitely does not take away from its capabilities on the battlefield. In the number 4 slot, we break into our other tank destroyer, this one being the American turreted TD, the T10's. It got a slight nerf in Update 10.3, but really it didn't do anything. The vehicle lost 10 damage per shot, and now it has heat shells as its premium and APCR as the standard. I don't see that as a problem. The APCR is 290 mils a pen, which is more than enough to cut through literally anything in front of you. So yeah, the pen on the standard still plenty. The premium pen at 402 is ridiculous, and you're never going to run into problems there either. So I don't really have a problem with the pen changes. And the alpha change, it lost 10. It went from 640 to 630. It's not going to be a noticeable difference in the actual gameplay when you're using this vehicle. The DPM went down by like 40. So it's fine. The vehicle is still ridiculously strong. It sits at 3,000 base damage per minute. If you're running rammer, it's 3,200. And while its dispersion isn't great, neither is the aiming time. When you realize that this vehicle sits at 2,120 hit points, and it's a top speed of 37 and a fairly good power to weight plus traverse speed, this tank is just insane. The turret is super well armored. The hatch got smaller in 10.3, and it's actually very, very troll to pen now. The E4 is just insane. It always has been, and now it's just elevated due to the changes of its PBR. I would highly recommend anybody that wants a heavy tank with much better DPM to grind the E4, because that's what this is. It's literally, I want an E100, but I don't want the downsides of having poor mobility and DPM. Well, then the E4 is definitely your route. It has a lot less HP, but sure, it still has that insane gun going for it. So, yeah, I think that this is definitely one of the best tanks still in Update 10.3. Into the number 3 position, we have a vehicle that most of you probably already knew is going to make the list, being the STB-1. This Tier 10 Japanese tech tree is ridiculous. It features 11 degrees of gun depression. It features solid DPM, 3,350 if you're running rammer. And the better part of this vehicle is the fact that it now has premium AP, 315 millimeters. That doesn't sound like a lot. You might be saying, well, if I run Kali on my Leopard, I have 330 heat. But you're forgetting that AP has 5 degrees of shell normalization, meaning that angled armor becomes basically useless. The STB will butter through an E100 turret. It will butter through basically anything that is slightly angled, allowing it to just cut right through the rest of the mediums in terms of pen. When it has to do with DPM, sure, the standard DPM might not be ridiculously high, but loading premium, you're only losing 10 damage per shot. If you were to compare a Leopard shooting its premium shells to an STB shooting its premium shells, they would be about on par in terms of total damage per minute. That is ridiculous when you think about it. That means that you could literally just shoot premium all day long with the STB and have no downside. It's a little stupid, I'm not going to lie. The dispersion is not great on the STB. I am running Refined Gun personally to make it a bit better, but yeah, it's not great in terms of dispersion, but it's also not anything terrible. But when you pair the great mobility of 53 kilometers per hour with the fantastic gun depression of 11 degrees with the ridiculously good pen and very solid DPM, it creates a vehicle that is just unparalleled when you compare it to a lot of the other mediums. The only other medium I'd say is remotely comparable is the M48 Patton. This vehicle doesn't have as much gun depression at 9 degrees, but it has much stronger turret armor. However, I would say for the upper echelon of players, I would definitely recommend the STB over the M48 just because this vehicle is a bit slower and a lot larger, making it harder to use in certain situations. Next up, we have the first heavy to make the list, the Type 71. This is just an incredible heavy. It features okay mobility. I wouldn't say it's anything ridiculous, but you have 2 options when it comes to the vehicle's playstyle. You can run improved V-stabs, which gives you 9 degrees of gun depression, or you can run improved suspension, which gives you much better traverse speed. It gives you a much better acceleration curve, so it really depends on what you want to go for. I kind of like running gun depression on the vehicle right now because we are currently in a hull down meta, and it's also funny when people think you're not going to have the gun depression to shoot them, and then you just yeet them out of existence with 9 degrees. So I think it's pretty fun, but either route that you choose, whether it's mobility or gun depression, is both very solid when it comes to this vehicle. In terms of damage per minute, it's fairly average at 2,450, but what's not average is the penetration. This vehicle sits at 346 millimeters of AP premium. This is enough to literally turn any armor into butter. It does not matter what you're aiming at. The fact that this thing has AP premium and that much pen of it is ridiculous. I just talked about why 315 was so good for the STB. This is stupid. It's basically the same pen as a Ho-Re's standard ammo. So yeah, the Type 71 is a little busted when it comes to the AP. It also got 20 more alpha on the latest update, now sitting at 420, which just means you can outtrade your opponents. It didn't lose any dispersion. It didn't lose any aiming time, so just kind of a flat buff there. In terms of mobility, as we went over, it's not too bad. Reaches a top speed of 37. Its traverse is 15, which is good enough to get the job done, and its power to weight weight ratio is pretty solid when you're using it properly. So overall, I really like the Type 71. It's just an incredible tank, and obviously the armor is insane on the vehicle. The upper plate is super duper troll, same for the lower plate. The turret armor has cheeks, but if you miss the cheeks by 1 millimeter, it goes ding and bounces right off. So yeah, I would give the Type 71 a solid 9 out of 10. And in a number 1 position, coming to a surprise of probably nobody, we have the IS-7. This is a vehicle for many years that has always been solid, but never in the top echelon of tanks. However, in the latest update, it's definitely arrived at that position, because not only did it get more HP, not only did it get tungsten rounds, but the major problem it's had for years, the premium pen, has been buffed, and not by a little amount. It went from 303 millimeters of APCR to 336 millimeters of APCR. This means that you will literally pen anything, really. I mean, even an E100 turret, you have a pretty decent chance of going through now. It allows this tank to feel like you actually are able to fight other heavies and not just struggle to pen them. So yeah, the IS-7 now really has no downsides. It has solid DPM for what is a heavy, especially if you pair that with tungsten and adrenaline. The vehicle features still good mobility, and because it got an additional 100 HP, it's got 2700. There's no downside to this tank. The armor is incredible, everything's incredible. I would highly recommend for anybody that does not currently have an IS-7 to get an IS-7. Even if you don't end up playing it that much, it's still just a good vehicle to have, whether you're planning on doing quick tournaments or you ever want to get in the comp. This is the tank to get the job done. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you'd like to see more like this, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. And yeah, let me know if you agree or disagree with this list. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.